It's a widespread thing in the world, in the industry, and with owners, coaches, and athletes. We all do it. We all engage in it. I really want us as owners to make sure that we are making our decisions based upon valid data and we're allowing the opportunity to be proved wrong. We do that all the time as coaches, where we get it in our mind that something won't work. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cheer Biz podcast. I'm your host, Dan Cotton, and today we are talking about confirmation bias and how I would overcome it. Now, before we get into the episode, please make sure if you are a gym owner, you have gone over to Cheer Gym Owners on Facebook and you have joined that group. And if you are a coach or a coach and owner, also join All-Star Coaches and Owners for groups that we have on Facebook, where there are amazing conversations going on. There is a lot of really good quality information being shared, and I would love to see you in it. Additionally, if you're looking to start the year of 2025 on the best foot for your business, you've got to get to our conference in Vegas in January, the 3rd through the 5th. Number one, it's in Vegas, which is always fun. Number two, it's next gen, so you know the quality is going to be on point. Number three, we have amazing sponsors who are going to be there, who can help provide fantastic stuff for you as you head into the new year. This is the time to be talking to uniform vendors and camp providers and photographers and videographers and equipment people, so you can set your budget as you head into the next year, as you're getting ready for the next All-Star season. This is the time you're going to want to talk to all of those people, and you're going to want to start your year off on the right foot. This is the time to get all the information in place, to get everything organized so you can absolutely crush it in 2025. Now, let's get into the episode. So first off, I want to talk about what confirmation bias is and how this impacts us. So confirmation bias is when you have a belief in your mind of something is true and you ignore all evidence except what validates your belief. So you ignore other information to prove and confirm what you believe is true. Now, when I first remember really this cementing in my brain was when I started learning out about it from a law enforcement perspective. And this was something that was really important, and I always kind of kept in my mind, because you wanted to be very careful when you were conducting any sort of an investigation of confirmation bias. The last thing you wanted to do is be conducting an investigation and say, oh, I believe that this crime occurred and this person was the one who committed it. And because that is my belief, I ignore all evidence to the contrary, and I end up getting the wrong person in trouble, right? The wrong person is arrested, the wrong person is charged, or even criminally convicted of something that they did not do because of my own confirmation bias. This is something that you have to battle daily as a police officer, whether you are doing an investigation or you've had a particular experience with a person. I found in that world, it was so funny that I actually believe that within the law enforcement world, at least within the department that I used to work in, confirmation bias was a huge issue, not on the street in investigations. I think oftentimes officers did a really good job of being impartial, but where they did not do a great job was internal judgment. So when you were judging another officer, you would have one experience with another officer on a call, and you would be like, that guy's lazy. And then everything you would do after that would be further confirmation of your point. And everything they did to the contrary to show that they weren't lazy and they were a hard worker, you would ignore until they gave you that one situation where they shortcut something or showed laziness. And you're like, see, lazy. I knew it. And it was just always something that rubbed me the wrong way. And I was the recipient of this, full honesty. And maybe this is why I was as aware of it as I was. I was the recipient because early on in my career, I defaulted to being very confident in my presentation, which is somewhat common for me. I carry myself with confidence even when I am unconfident. In fact, probably more so when I am unconfident. There were a number of officers that kind of were like, oh, he's arrogant. I don't personally believe that I'm arrogant based off of what I understand the definition of arrogant to believe. I do believe in my skill sets. I am confident in the things I am good at doing, but I always believe I have more to learn. I don't think I always have the answer or anything like that. And that was something that carried with me through my entire career at the police department. There were some officers that I worked with for 15 years that no matter what, their opinion that I was arrogant never changed. It would never change, even though I would work with them for hours trying to help them as a trainer, or I would go out of my way to take care of them and do things that were not like an arrogant base, or I would debase myself in a class and say, I messed this thing up and that thing up. There were still people who, when I would do something where I would say something that maybe wasn't delivered very well or gave the impression of being arrogant, they were like, see, I told you that guy's arrogant. He's a jerk. And not that I can't be a jerk, and not that I can't come across as arrogant, because those two things are very valid. I can be a jerk and I can come across as arrogant. I don't believe that that is who I am. And it was a confirmation bias. And I was working out the other day and I had this epiphany. I don't exactly know why. I think there was a conversation with some of the coaches that I coach with, and they were talking about an athlete. They were like, they just can't do it. Like I just don't believe in it. And I was like, you have major confirmation bias in this circumstance. Like, you are pulling out, well, see, last night they didn't do it. They didn't hit this stunt. And I'm kind of muddling the example. It's not fully accurate, but I'm using that as an example. They didn't hit that stunt last night, and therefore we should take them out. And I'm like, but you're ignoring the fact that the past 5 nights they have hit it, just because you've kind of always thought that they shouldn't be in that spot. And so now that one moment is your confirmation of like, see, I told you so. And so I think this is a really big problem in humans in general, but certainly in the cheer industry. And so I'm going to break down the different ways that confirmation bias can impact us in our gyms and how I would overcome them. Number one is confirmation bias as an owner. It is very easy to get this going, and you have to constantly battle it. And there's a couple different areas that you can have confirmation bias. So number one is as a business owner, and I've talked about this on Stop Saying It Won't Work for Me, but the confirmation bias that like either something you're doing is a really great idea, or something that you're doing doesn't work, and you shouldn't do it because you have some sort of confirmation bias to it. You need to be making decisions based upon data. So if I go, see, I need to run my tryouts the way we've always run my tryouts because it worked out this time, and boom, confirmation. When you ignore all other evidence to the contrary, that's a bias. And I'm throwing out tryouts as an arbitrary example. A better example, when we do our routine, we always choreograph it in this exact order. That's how we do our routines. That's our brand. My confirmation bias is I go to a competition and one of my teams wins, and I go, see, I told you it works. Meanwhile, your 4 other teams didn't win, and you're ignoring that evidence to say the formula didn't work, to say this one example proves that it did. Or the more common confirmation bias is it won't work because I tried it one time and it didn't work. And see, I tried it again for 5 seconds and it didn't work. So therefore, confirmed, it does not work. And really, you have a lack of information. You have a lack of experience. Another way confirmation bias in the positive would be of like, we do it is like, why do you do that? Well, because we've always done it that way. Okay, well, you are probably engaging in some portion of confirmation bias. So I really want us as owners to make sure that we are making our decisions based upon valid data, and we're allowing the opportunity to be proved wrong. Eliminating confirmation bias is quite literally allowing the opportunity for you to be proved wrong. You are saying, I am not an infallible creature. I can make mistakes, and I'm going to let the evidence speak for itself and prove to me what the right path forward is. That is one way it can impact us as owners. Another way it can impact us as owners, and this is going to be relayed in a lot of different examples when I start talking about coaches and athletes too, is how we view our staff. This coach, like I mentioned before, they're lazy, right? They're lazy because I see them sitting down a lot. And you have a conversation with them and you say, don't sit down. I need you to make sure you're standing up in your classes. And then they go for 3 months without sitting down. But then they sit down one class and you see it and you go, ha ha, see, I knew they were lazy. right? That's a confirmation bias. You're ignoring all the other evidence of the last 3 months they weren't sitting down, and you're using that as now confirmation that they are lazy because they sat down once. So we can have it happen with our staff in a variety of different ways, to include positives, right? They're the hardest worker, they're the best, this is my go-to person, and then you ignore all other evidence to show that maybe they're not your best employee, maybe they aren't your go-to person, but because you've framed it that way in your mind, that's the only thing that you will allow to be in there. So you have to allow, again, evidence and data to speak for itself. How we do this as coaches is actually far more impactful to our athletes. I kind of already mentioned the example, and it even came up again last night when I was coaching. One of my co-coaches was like, what do you think about this person's stunt group? My other coach was like, well, I think it's too late to change it now. And I said, well, they hit it more than this other group. And they were like, well, that's not true. Now we've been tracking stunts. So we actually have a tracker. We went back to it, and I'm going to tell you, I was right. They did hit it more than another group, but because that coach had it in their head that they didn't like that group. They didn't have, not they didn't like them, right? It wasn't a personal thing. They didn't have confidence that that group would consistently hit. They were like, well, we should change it. And they would have been making their decision on bad data because they were going off of a confirmation bias and it came up because they dropped one. And it was like, I told you so. And I'm sitting here going, come on, guys, help me out. I'm trying to have your back. But we do that all the time as coaches, where we get it in our mind that something won't work. This choreography is incorrect, or this athlete can or cannot do a skill, or this stunt group will or will not be successful. And we're not basing it off always of valid information. So where I want you to test yourself as a coach is if you have a standing belief, right? Not a belief of like, I saw this thing, the timing was off. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you have a standing belief about an individual athlete, a group, a team, I need you to look at, is this actually backed up by evidence? Is this proven by the conduct? Another way this might happen as a coach or within a gym is, oh, that team, those girls are all jerk. They're all mean. That's the mean girl team. Well, are they the mean girl team? Or do you have confirmation bias where they're actually really nice kids, but yeah, they can trend towards being kind of mean sometimes, and therefore you've now labeled them that way. Everything they do to prove you wrong, you ignore, and you only pay attention to the things that prove you right. So we as coaches need to be very cognizant of our confirmation bias. We need to do our best to eliminate it. And how we do that is we look at, is this a long-standing belief? And then is this backed up by data? And then the last thing I would do as a coach is I would say, okay, how do I change this? Because that's ultimately our goal, is to get our athletes and our teams and our stunt groups to do what they cannot do yet. It's what they're currently incapable of. So your job is to modify behaviors and actions. So how can you change that? How can you positively impact that group and those humans so you can make a positive change for them? That's how I would overcome the confirmation bias. I would make a change and make it so that thing is no longer the reality. Another area confirmation bias comes in is within our athletes. And I'm going to be having a conversation with my level 6 kids about this. And there is the external confirmation bias about their teammates, about, oh, well, we're not a good team, or we're the best team. There's all sorts of different biases that we can have and beliefs that we can have that we can then use confirmation bias to affirm. I'll see this happen on teams where they're like, we're just not good. Meanwhile, you guys just hit full out. Yeah, great. But, we hit, and then we drop one stunt in one full out, and it's like, see, confirmed, we're not good. We're not going to win. And that's nonsense. That has no correlation. There's also the confirmation bias about their teammates, right? People make assumptions and create beliefs about, is this person a hard worker? Are they lazy? Are they a good flyer? Are they an easy flyer? Are they a good base? Are they a bad base? Do they catch? There's a million different things we judge people on, and we ignore evidence to the contrary. And that is something that as a coach, you need to guide. The other and far more nefarious is the confirmation bias kids have within their heads, and generally about themselves. And this specifically relates to tumblers. So I'm going to give you an example of a couple of kids, one in particular that I coach who is a phenomenal tumbler. You could put her double in a textbook. when she throws it, but she throws it very intermittently because she's very in her head about it. She's incredibly hard on herself. Now, she's hard on everyone, but she's even harder on herself. She has the worst possible confirmation bias, the worst. And this oftentimes happens with kids who are struggling with mental blocks, is they have a confirmation bias, which Jeff Benson would say of a lack of a growth mindset. But their confirmation bias is, yes, I did it right 22 times, but I popped it this one time, and that confirms that I'm broken. That confirms that I can't do it. That confirms that I have a mental block. Instead of saying, I did it right 10,000 times and did it wrong one, so less than 1% of the time I did it wrong, I'm actually exceptional. They have a confirmation bias of, I did not throw this skill, and therefore that proves that I am right. And I don't have the skill, or I'm not good enough, or I do have a mental block. And that one is a deep-seated, nefarious one. And it is something we as coaches have to call out, and we have to help those kids say, no, that's confirmation bias speaking. You're ignoring the 12 you did before. You're ignoring the fact that you're doing it here and doing it there, and you're not scared of it this way, or you can do it with a spot. So you do have the skill. You're ignoring that and using the confirmation of, you popped it this one time, to say that you have a block or you have a problem. And I'm not saying you don't have anything going on in your head, but you're further cementing the false belief that you're not measuring up, you're not good enough, you cannot do it. It's just it's a widespread thing in the world, in the industry, and with owners, coaches, and athletes. We all do it. We all engage in it. And the way we overcome it is by calling it out. The way we overcome it is by having an open mind and saying, am I being presented with all of the information? And if I'm not, if I'm only presenting myself with a small amount of information to make my decisions, then I need to seek out additional information to make a better decision. You may still come to the same decision, but you want to have all of the information, right? You want to make sure that you're making the right call based off of the full menu of facts, so you can actually do the right thing. So as you leave the episode, my biggest challenge to you is do an internal deep dive. Look at yourself and say, am I engaging in confirmation bias? What are long-held beliefs that I've had? And then what is the evidence that those beliefs are actually true? And go through the list, right? Oh, this is the evidence that is true. This. This is what I would do with investigations. I would say, okay, I believe that this person committed this crime and that I have probable cause to arrest them. And I believe that because this witness statement and this person saw them do it, and they said that they did X, Y, and Z. And I have physical evidence of, an injury to this person. And then I have injury to that person's hand. So that makes me believe that they hit them, and, this and this. And then by all of those things stacking up, I can feel very confident that this thing occurred and that person was the person to commit it. And the same thing goes with every other thing that we're making decisions on, whether it's making a decision about a move to make in the business, or we're making a decision about a group to use in a routine, or we're an athlete making a decision about the skills that we have. Let's list out all of the reasons that prove what I believe. And if the list of things that prove what I believe is much, much shorter than the list of things that disprove what I believe, then I am engaging in confirmation bias. And confirmation bias does not get anyone anywhere. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, thanks for joining, and we will catch you on the next one.